My wildcard is officially active ahead of Game Week 6, and in today's video I'm going to reveal my first Game Week 6 wildcard draft, talk about those players that I think are essential, some brilliant differentials available to us, and all the other good stuff. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you do drop a like, aiming for 400, and if you haven't already, make sure you do smash that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get to today's video. So first up, let's talk about why I actually decided to use my wildcard in Game Week 6, because I wasn't actually as locked in as other managers out there. I think a few people were just like, get my team done. I think wildcard 6 is the best strategy. I still don't think it is necessarily the greatest strategy. So if you're in a position right now where you're umming and ahhing about it, hopefully this section will just give a bit of context on why I done it. Maybe you could resonate with it, or maybe you're going to watch this and think, damn, Nacho made a mistake hitting his wildcard. I don't want to be that guy. Either way, hopefully it provides some value. So this is how my team was for Game Week 5. I'm not really going to talk about the actual points. I want to talk about how I view the players going forward from Game Week 6 onwards. And a bit of context, I had 2 free transfers available. So what I would have done is sold Mo Salah down to Semenyo, and I would have then sold Chris Wood to Erling Haaland. 2 players that I think would have not been in a wildcard Game Week 6, so I would have addressed those issues with the 2 free transfers. So it's not fair of me to sit here right now and say that Mo Salah and Wood are problems. That's why I wildcarded, because I was going to sell him anyway with my 2 free transfers. So first up in goal, I think Dubravka is absolutely fine, but Sanchez, I'm concerned. We had the quotes from Maresca stating that Jorgensen will get game time at some point in the Premier League. I thought, what if that red card against Man United could lead towards Sanchez actually just being sat on the bench for Game Week 6 as well? What it's worth, I still think Sanchez probably does start, but my thought process was, well, if I lose my goalkeeper as well, that is not a good position to be in. In terms of the defenders, for this game week, double Spurs is absolutely fine, Porro and Van de Ven, but it's not where I want my money invested. In particular, Pedro Porro, now he's lost set pieces and doesn't rack up defensive contributions. And also with Murillo still being yellow flagged, we need to remember Nottingham Forest has got a midweek game in the Europa League. Could Murillo start that because it might be a priority and then is benched for the Premier League game, or vice versa? Regardless, the uncertainty is the thing that was killing me ahead of Game Week 6. And the same applies for the likes of Aston Villa. Right now, I've been sitting here thinking the day will come eventually where Aston Villa do deliver. And at home against Fulham, while that is a possibility that they do actually deliver, Fulham are a good team, and Aston Villa are playing midweek in the Europa League. When you add those two things together, if Villa then go on and beat Fulham 3-0 and Rodgers and Watkins are in and amongst the goals and assists, I can just put my hands up and say, you know what? I've got enough data to suggest that Villa and both Rodgers and Watkins are not good value. If they now do deliver, it is what it is. I don't really think there's anything to suggest people holding Villa can then come off the back of it and say, you know what, you were wrong to sell Villa. There was plenty of information to suggest this was going to happen against Fulham. So for that reason, when we take into account the Sanchez situation, the concerns about Murillo, whether he's available, double Rodgers and Watkins are not ideal. I think that was enough to force my wildcard just on the players alone. Then we have to take into consideration the transfers that then get saved. So if you use 2 free transfers this week, wildcard later, you lose the transfers. In my position, now that I'm wildcarded in Game Week 6, I still have those 2 free transfers available to me from Game Week 7 onwards, which of course is a new part of the game that we had last season and this season. So that is a huge position to be in. Wildcarded in 6, 2 free transfers in 7. I could be as aggressive as others in Game Week 8 when they're looking to wildcard. The other big thing, we can't forget, price changes are massive. Whether wildcard now or in Game Week 8, I want Arsenal players. And seeing Raya go up in price, Gabriel go up in price, Gyökeres possibly go up in price, and in the meantime, Rodgers and Watkins go down in price. The team that I want in Game Week 8 is pretty identical to that in 6, but it'll be $1 million more expensive to own that team. All that taken into occasion, the fact I'll have 3 free transfers in Game Week 8 to basically combat anybody that's wildcarded in that week, I think it was a no-brainer for my team. Let me know what your thoughts are. Now let's take a look at Game Week 6 wildcard. So of course, whenever we're wildcarding, the players are important, but the fixtures are equally important. We do need to take a look at what is ahead of us and which teams and players absolutely have to be on the agenda here. Now, I've taken this from Fantasy Football Scout, ordered by difficulty over the next 6 game weeks. Obviously, Spurs being the top of that and Crystal Palace being the bottom. So I want to go through a few key points here. First up, as we stated, I think Arsenal long-term are just essential for our teams. Even though they've slipped up in 2 of the big matches against Liverpool and Man City, I expect Arsenal to still be really, really good in the games that we just expect them to win, especially with the addition of Gyökeres. I think Gyökeres is not a big game player at all, but do I think he's a flat track bully? Absolutely. And when we look at the fixtures coming up, Newcastle away is the problem with this strategy. It's not a great entry point at all. I think Newcastle have got a decent record against Arsenal over the years. So I do think if you go for a wild card in 6, you just have to suck it up, bring in your Arsenal players, because I don't think it's worth having a Game Week 6 punt to then use a free transfer in Game Week 7 up against Graham Potter's West Ham, which could be just a fantastic fixture. Then after that, Fulham, Palace, Burnley and Sunderland. While Burnley and Sunderland are putting up good performances in their games at home, I just think Arsenal are going to sweep these teams aside. I think they are too strong from a squad depth perspective, but they are testing our patience, of course, with the injury to Noni Madueke, where it looks like he is out up until Christmas. But for me, that just secures the minutes of Bukayo Saka more so than what we thought. In terms of Erling Haaland, a bit different. If you go in Game Week 6, this is the time to own Man City. Look at the fixtures coming up here for them. Burnley, Brentford, Everton, Villa, Bournemouth. Fantastic. If you're wildcard and you don't go without Erling Haaland, you need to let me know in the comment section why you're doing it. Are you foreseeing the future? Are you a genie? Let me know why you're avoiding him, because it is just the most obvious player in our wildcard teams. With that being said, there has been a little bit of concern off the back of Pep's press conference stating that he is struggling with something, but I think really he will be available for this game. But of course, being on the wildcard, it does allow us to be flexible, whereas others have free transferred him in. So it's still a benefit having your wildcard on. European football is going to impact everything. We have the Champions League. We saw how that impacted certain teams. We've now got the Europa League ahead of Game Week 6. And then we'll have the Conference League between Game Week 6 and 7. And then so on and so forth. Champions League once again. Europa League after that. And Conference League. So when we look at the ticker here, we got Spurs top. Then we got Arsenal. Both really good fixtures. Probably teams that we do want to bring in certain players. But of course, Champions League football, what is that impact going to be? I think it might hinder Spurs more than that of Arsenal, because I don't think Spurs have got the squad depth to be able to balance both European football and Premier League football at the highest bracket, whereas Arsenal have had a couple of seasons now to kind of adjust to that sort of format. So when we look at some of the teams that don't have European football, Wolves, Leeds, Everton, West Ham, Brighton, I do think in this scenario here, there are some temptations for these teams. I think Wolves, Agbadou in defence, Strand Larsen as a cheap enabler. In terms of Leeds, Stack in midfield, good option at 5 million. And then Everton, someone like a Tarkowski who's ticking over fantastic. I think we do want some of these teams, similar to that Bournemouth, started the season really well, continue with good fixtures and no European football. These sorts of teams we have to consider. Even if they're not highest on the ticker, you know they are just focusing on each and every game week as opposed to a game week, midweek, game week. And for that reason, I think these teams jump up as a bit more of a priority in our sides. Finally, Liverpool ranked really low right now. Palace away, who are on a 17-game competitive unbeaten run. So I do expect that to be a tough affair against that back three of Guéhi, Lacroix, Richards, one of the best in the league right now. Then Chelsea away. Chelsea could just obviously hit the self-destruct button once again, but I still think that's a tough fixture for Liverpool regardless. Then they got Man United, Brentford and Aston Villa. So I think Liverpool are low, but I think in between those fixtures, they have got good ones. The problem, if you're not going Mo Salah, who is the guy that you're trusting? Ekitike's red card means that Isak is a guaranteed starter for Game Week 6, but Haaland and Isak up top together at that price point, so hard to put in alongside a Bruno Fernandes or a Bukayo Saka in your sides. So yes, I get it. you want a piece of Liverpool, but let me know in the comment section who is the Liverpool guy to own, because I just don't see where the value lies outside of Mo Salah. So that's a bit of a cover on the fixtures. Let's get into this Game Week 6 wildcard team. So, taking a look at my Game Week 6 wildcard draft, and a bit of a caveat before we get into it. I appreciate people in the comments are saying that obviously these teams do look similar to other people's out there. I'm just going to say, I don't really watch other people's content, so I don't know whether this does look like it, but I understand that there is a small pool of players that are being selected. So naturally, wildcard teams are going to look the same. Everybody wants Arsenal. Everybody's going to have Haaland. Everyone's going to have Reinders, etc., etc., Bruno Fernandes. So by default, kind of 9-10 players are going to be very, very popular template picks. If you want me to go for rogue picks, unfortunately, I'm just not that guy who is going to, just because I want to, go for some crazy picks. I'm going to ignore Erling Haaland. I'm going to put in Voldemada, for example. I think template players are template for a reason. They're good picks. Of course, where I can, I will put some differentiators in there. But right now, I think these players are rightly so in this wildcard team. So first up, we've got Raya and Dubravka between the sticks. Now, Dubravka is just an auto lock for me. Burnley have shown at times that defensively they can be sound. So I think if we ever needed to call upon him, he's a really safe and steady pick to have in this team. So he is an essential player in this side. Then we've got David Raya. Now, I think Donnarumma is also a really interesting one, because for this game week, obviously Donnarumma is so much better than Raya. Long term, over the next 8 game weeks, I know David Raya is the one that I want to own at 5.5 million. I think Arsenal's defence is one that I can consistently see keep clean sheets. And I do think, even though I'm going for Raya between the sticks, I need to ask myself, is there a couple of Arsenal outfield players that give me a reason not to have Raya? Because if I go Raya, I can only have 2 outfield Arsenal players. I don't think I'm ever going to get to that point. Maybe Eze emerges as an option, but I don't see myself going for Saka and Gyökeres. I think a defender is going to be in this team in the shape of someone like a Gabriel or Saliba. So it only gives me space for one actual attacker. But with this Arsenal team right now, do I see myself really wanting to pursue double Arsenal attack? I think the answer is no. I think Eze's minutes will always be a question mark. I think Declan Rice is fine. I think Saka or Gyökeres, it's never going to be both. So for that reason, just because of the 8 game week period, I'm going to go for David Raya. However, for the next 3 game weeks, I do prefer Donnarumma. Moving into my wildcard defenders, and again, there are some players here who are just rightly so template picks. I've gone for Saliba just to mix things up a little bit as opposed to Gabriel, and he is slightly cheaper at 6 million. I'm going to be honest, I haven't really seen enough over the last 12 months to suggest that Gabriel is now back as this free-flowing goal-scorer machine from set pieces. I do think the teams have figured him out, and officials have figured Arsenal out a little bit with this, sometimes the fouls that they were doing on goalkeepers in order to free up the back post for Gabriel. So I will say, I don't think the goal scoring is going to be as frequent from Gabriel. And the defensive contributions, unfortunately, aren't really there for both Saliba and Gabriel. So we're very much just going for defenders for Arsenal for clean sheet coverage. And that is it. So I'm just going to go for Saliba right now, just because he's the cheapest. If I had Gabriel, though, I would say to you, he probably would just be my preference. But I don't think there's much in him regardless. So don't be sweating about Gabriel's price rises. Just go get Saliba. Next, we've got Tarkowski at 5.5 million. Now, when we're looking at defensive contributions alongside good fixtures, he is a perfect example of that. He's hit defensive contributions in every game. I expect him to continue to do so because that literally is his responsibility in the team to clear everything from his own box. And still with Jared Branthwaite not returning, I do still think that Tarkowski, once Branthwaite does return, plays that type of role. So long term, I think Tarkowski is great, and I think the fixtures over the next few are really, really solid as well. And I like having somebody at 5.5 million in this team. If I had 6 million and then down to 4.5, I would be worried that somebody in between those two prices would emerge over the longer term. Then we got Senesi at 4.7 million. Again, this is just going to be another one alongside Dubravka, who is a lock in this team and I think essential. Bournemouth are not in European football. The fixtures long-term are good, and he is just ridiculous for defensive contributions. Again, a little bit stale going for these centre-backs, but unfortunately defensive contributions are just such a huge factor in the game. Then we got Anderson, again, 4 defensive contributions. This is by no means a lock in this team because I think there are other considerations for us. I think if you can get up to a Dan Burn, I quite like Dan Burn or Livramento of Newcastle. I think we got people like Richards at Crystal Palace, but those fixtures are really difficult. We also do have Van der Ven of Spurs. Not one that really picks up defensive contributions, but I would argue have better fixtures. But then it comes down to it. We have to remember, Van der Ven playing on the weekend and midweek in Champions League, or Anderson playing for a Fulham team who are just fully focused on the Premier League. And I think for that reason, Anderson is just the better pick. And once the fixtures get more difficult, at least he will be picking up defensive contributions every single game. And he rotates quite well with this team. Finally, we've got Alderete of Sunderland. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know anything about him, but I didn't want to put another 4.5 million in this team right now just because of budget reasons. So we've gone for him for defensive contributions. I would love to sit here and say there's a new John Lundstrom who is scoring goals and assists each and every week, but unfortunately that doesn't exist right now. So for that reason, I'm looking at who's playing for a team that's been not too bad, and I think Sunderland have actually passed the eye test on many occasions. And he is a guaranteed starter who will pick up defensive contributions when those fixtures are difficult, which they continue to be so for Sunderland. So that's the back 5. The only ones that are locked in are going to be Senesi, really. Anderson is close to being locked in. Otherwise, the others can change, but I think we are all fishing from the same pond right now, and unfortunately, it is quite a small pond for defenders. Moving into my Game Week 6 wildcard midfielders, and I have no Mo Salah. I have tried to build a team with Mo Salah. I will show you at the end of this video alongside Erling Haaland, and I think it just takes up way too much of the budget. I do think in Game Week 6, you've got to say to yourself, I want to just own one of them, and unfortunately, I'm leaning towards Haaland. Well, I'm not leaning, I am fully on Erling Haaland as opposed to Mo Salah, but as I said, I will show you a draft in this video that does have a Mo Salah and Erling Haaland combination. So when we take out Mo Salah, I'll put up a screenshot here of the midfielders available, we start working ourselves down the list in terms of premiums. Cole Palmer injured, and there's rumours that he could be out for 3 to 6 weeks. If that's true, then he's gone. He is not an option for us for the foreseeable future. Then we've got Bukayo Saka at 9.8 million, who I absolutely think is one of the best differentials in the game right now. However, just come back from injury. Yes, Madueke's out, but are we going to see Arteta just roll out Saka 90 minutes every single game now with Champions League football? I don't know the answer to that right now, unfortunately. Need to gain a bit more information because I feel a little bit risky putting in Saka as my premium midfielder when I still don't know whether he is actually 100% fit. When we got someone like Gyökeres, who, yes, he is getting some early substitutions, but I know he is fully fit and possibly the penalty taker as well. That is something we really do need to take into consideration. So by default, Bruno Fernandes is the next best premium at 9 million. Marmoush injured. Wirtz, nobody's touching. In Buemo, I can't justify going there. Phil Foden, exciting, but again, is he at risk of pet rotation? Cunha, no. Odegaard injured. So by default, it is Bruno Fernandes. I think these midfielders are a little bit washed right now. And I think Bruno, with his fixtures coming up away against Brentford, the great fixture in Game Week 7 at home against Sunderland, I think rightly so he is in this wildcard. Then we got Semenyo at 7.7 million. So expensive. Hopefully you picked him up at a cheaper price point. Again, do I think personally Semenyo is overrated? Yes. Do I think on a wildcard it is worth me taking the risk of him continuing to tick over with points and not own him? No. So he is of course going to be in this team. And remember, Bournemouth, no European football. I think that will just add up as we continue. And if Semenyo is the penalty taker for Bournemouth, then he is just ridiculous value. I will hold my hands up and say that. Now, the first real big differential here is going to be Xavi Simons. Now, again, this is not locked in at all at 7.1 million. However, I do like him as a pick. Whenever he has played in the 10, he has been so good for Spurs. Everything runs through him. And with the fixtures coming up, I feel like I need some sort of Spurs attacker. Wolves at home this game week, which is really good. Leeds away the following game week. As I said, I do think Champions League football will catch up with Spurs, and I think they might just rely on set pieces at times. But who's a set piece taker in that team? It is Xavi Simons. So I think points are going to be consistent with him over the next 6 game weeks. It's just whether I can actually be brave enough to go there and have that gut feeling that he is actually the one to go for, because of course at cheaper prices we got Ndiaye at Everton, who's the penalty taker and obviously guaranteed minutes. I don't mind him either. Then we got Reinders, who was locked into this team, 90-minute man, really driving that Man City team at times. I think he's a no-brainer. I don't really need to talk too much about him. And then at 5 million, we've got Leeds' Stack. Now, we are jumping ahead of the gun here. Yes, he delivered in game week 5. That ain't happening each and every week. This guy is not locked into my team by any means. That could easily be a Dewsbury Hall, for example. I do think if I went for Xavi Simons, I would probably lean towards Dewsbury Hall more than that as Stack. But I do want to put him in just because he has gone under the radar up until game week 5 where he got that monster haul. Now inevitably everybody is jumping on him. In terms of a wildcard, it's nice to have him in and understand whether he is going to be a good option, but that could easily be Dewsbury Hall for me. I don't want to go all the way down to a Josh King because I don't think he's guaranteed minutes, and I do want to give myself the potential of bench boosting later down the line. So in terms of the midfielders, Semenyo is locked in, Reinders is locked in, Bruno Fernandes is locked in, alongside Senesi and Dubravka for this team so far. Finally, taking a look at the wildcard forwards, and this is the one that honestly has been the biggest headache for me and possibly the most underwhelming as well. Started the season really excited about the forwards. Now I'm getting to a game week 6 wildcard, I'm not that excited at all. So Erling Haaland, of course, for me is an absolute lock on this wildcard. As I said, the Pep Guardiola press conference not ideal, but I am anticipating for him to be available. And again, like I said, us being on a wildcard is a strong position because if Pep does come out and say, you know what, Erling Haaland is actually injured, those that brought him in as part of a free transfer is actually a worse situation to be in. Being on a wildcard, you can react instantly and make necessary changes. So don't view it as a bad thing. It might actually be an opportunity to gain an advantage on those that haven't activated the wildcard. And I think it would push a lot of people to do so. But as of right now, of course, Erling Haaland is in. Then we got Gyökeres. Now, I like the idea of Alexander Isak. He will start because Ekitike, of course, got that red card in the cup game, which means he will miss game week 6. But can I afford Haaland and Alexander Isak? I don't think that really is a feasible strategy for this team. I would have to take out 1.5 million out of this team. That probably sees me downgrade Xavi down to someone else. I just don't really like that sort of move. And I do think the issue will remain. Isak and Ekitike sharing minutes at times. And for those people that are holding their wildcard for game week 8 to maybe say to yourself, yes, now I can get Isak. The same problem is going to continue, unfortunately. So by default, Gyökeres is in. However, could I see myself pivot towards a Saka midfield and take Gyökeres down to someone really cheap like a Strand Larsen or a Calvert-Lewin? Yes, I do think that is a possibility. And then João Pedro is here by default just because I've built up so much value in him. However, I'm concerned about Chelsea. I think we are going to struggle over this period, balancing the Champions League and the Premier League. And I think the lack of experience in this Chelsea team in attacking areas is going to hinder us long term. But he is in just because the injuries Chelsea have, we literally have to play João Pedro 90 minutes each and every week. The fixtures remain good, and I'm very underwhelmed by the other forwards in the game right now. So by default, João Pedro is kind of in this team. So that's how the wildcard is looking. In terms of the lock players, Dubravka, Senesi, some Arsenal defender, Semenyo, Reinders, Bruno Fernandes, Erling Haaland, João Pedro probably. Outside of that, I think the rest of the positions are up for grabs. Let me show you what the team would look like for game week 6, 7, 8 onwards. The advantages of why having 2 free transfers and the wildcard being used this week is so powerful and why you should consider it. So just showing you how this team would look as we progress throughout the game weeks and why using the wildcard in game week 6 doesn't necessarily look appealing for this particular game week, but it does set you up really well from game week 7 onwards. And as I said, you jump on those price changes and really you're getting the players in place for the long term. So this is how my team would look for game week 6. Again, I don't love it because you've got double Arsenal away against Newcastle. If we were in a position maybe where we had Van der Ven instead of Anderson, I could then start Van der Ven and bench Saliba. But really, if you own Arsenal defenders, you're just going to start them and hope for the best. And maybe Arsenal just walk away as 1-0 winners away from home. But I think the rest of the team looks really solid for game week 6. Nice differential in the shape of Xavi Simons. And we also got those essential players in the team. Then going into game week 7, as I mentioned, this is where we will have our 2 free transfers available. And this is where you put yourself in a really powerful position, because while others might be scrambling to get Arsenal players in, we've already got our triple up locked in. Now again, yes, Bukayo Saka may emerge as an option. We got to decide that before the game week 6 deadline, where the others can make it in game week 7. But I think this team looks really, really solid for game week 7. If I put the fixtures up on the right-hand side, as you can see, we've covered ourselves for Bournemouth, which I think is good. We got a bit of Spurs away against Leeds, which I still think is an okay fixture. We got our Arsenal against a West Ham team who were looking woeful. Bruno Fernandes is in for Sunderland. João Pedro is in. And again, I don't feel like we need Liverpool away against Chelsea necessarily. Then I look at the rest of the fixtures. Newcastle against Forest. I don't mind having some Newcastle, but again, who is the player to own in that fixture? Everton against Crystal Palace, hopefully a low-scoring affair. We don't have Aston Villa at home against Burnley. Probably this will be the week Watkins scores the hat-trick inevitably, but is there enough of a reason for me to go there knowing the fixtures afterwards are terrible? The answer is going to be no. So the team kind of picks itself for game week 7, and like I said, I think it looks really, really solid. Captaincy, of course, would be on Erling Haaland. Then we progress into game week 8, and I think this is possibly the time where having the free transfers in our back pocket starts to become a huge, huge advantage. Now, probably would play Saliba, of course, and play the double Arsenal defence in this team, but I think once again, if I rolled out this team, I'd be absolutely content with it. The big question in game week 8 is going to be, what do you do with Bruno Fernandes? Obviously, we're looking really far ahead here, but when we look at it from game week 8 onwards, Liverpool, Brighton, Forest, Spurs, Everton, Palace, I think that's a tricky run for them. Of course, no European football, but if Amorim does continue to have these below par performances, this is why having 3 transfers here could be really, really important. Maybe we pivot Bruno Fernandes to a Cole Palmer and we take the money out of another player in order to enable it. Maybe the days of João Pedro are done and we use these transfers to do so. What I'm trying to say is this. This is why I wanted to wildcard in game week 6, because I've got the transfers available in future game weeks to be flexible while I still maintain the key players in this side that I know need to be in the team regardless. Triple Arsenal, Erling Haaland, Semenyo, Senesi, and then we can just change the outer players around that as we progress throughout the game week. So that's how the team is looking right now. Of course, I will update you throughout the week. Let me quickly show you what a Salah Haaland team will look like, but I'll be surprised if you love it. So here's how a wildcard game week 16 would look like if you went for a Mo Salah and Erling Haaland draft. Now, just to show you the changes that I would have made from the previous one, of course, we had to downgrade Tarkowski to a 4.5 million defender in the shape of Van der Ven, but again, don't think that's absolutely terrible. We've had to obviously upgrade Bruno Fernandes to Mo Salah, which I don't think is a problem, but of course you can't then have Mo Salah alongside it. Haven't really found a way to be able to do so. Then we've had to downgrade Xavi Simons to Ndiaye, and we've had to downgrade Gyökeres, which I think is the biggest problem in this team, to someone like a Foster of Burnley. So really, we've taken a huge chunk out of the money out of the forwards in Gyökeres to go down to Foster. I haven't been able to find an easy way in order to have Gyökeres in this team and also the midfield. I think you probably would then have to sacrifice Ndiaye even further, or Semenyo has to come out of this team. So I think there are ways in order for you to have Haaland, Salah and a Saka or Gyökeres, but you are making big sacrifices to the side. I think this still keeps the balance in the team while not having an Arsenal attacker, and you kind of just lean towards their defence. So game week 6 I think looks fine. Yes, you are starting Leeds' stack in this side, but it is what it is. Then in game week 7, again, we got the 2 free transfers. We will be leaning towards more of a back 4 at times, but maybe with defensive contributions, that's the way to go. I think the team for 7 actually looks okay. Yes, you don't have an Arsenal attacker in that situation, but we still got the double Arsenal defence, and we can play a midfield 4, which looks not too bad, to be honest with you. Then coming into game week 8, once again, we could play stacking midfield, we could bench Ndiaye, front 3, we could play Foster at home against Leeds. I don't think that's a terrible situation to put yourself in. And then we got the differential captaincy of Mo Salah if you wanted to. What I don't mind about this is that what you can do for yourself in game week 8 is actually just then take the money out of Mo Salah at any point if you want to, and then spread the funds across the team with your transfers that you do have available. My big issue with it is that actually for game week 6 and 7, I just don't know whether Mo Salah is incredible value. You're not going to captain him in game week 6. You're not going to captain him in game week 7. And you're probably just forcing yourself to captain him in game week 8. For that reason, then I start to ask the question, why is Mo Salah in your team? Because he's not passing the eye test. He's not putting up the underlying numbers. And if he isn't your captain, then what really is the point? Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's video looking at my Game Week 6 wildcard draft. As I said, it is active, and of course, I will be doing an updated version later on this week because lots could change after these cup games, European football, etc., etc. Let me know in the comment section, have you activated your wildcard? Are you activating another chip like triple captaincy? Let me know, and of course, if you did enjoy this video, please do consider dropping a like, and of course, hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already. Have an amazing day, take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.